Hello and welcome. This video is a long time coming and it's going to be a doozy. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my gigantic, insane, completely out of control eyeshadow palette collection. It's going to be a doozy, guys. This is going to be a long video. I don't know if you're coming from my face palette collection video, but this is a two-part series. Part 1 is face palettes, part 2 is eyeshadow palettes. Part 2 is much bigger. It's gonna be a doozy, so this deserves a bit of a doozy of a beer. This one's called the Great Molasses Disaster. Ooh, so foamy. Oh my gosh, it's brown. It's like molasses. I don't know if this was a Massachusetts only thing, but did anybody remember in like first or second grade reading that Great Molasses Disaster storybook where, you know, the big tanker of molasses exploded in the middle of January and like flooded the town with molasses? And when they shared that story with you in like first grade, it was just like, oh, how funny, what a weird thing that happened, what a weird disaster. But you guys, it's very serious. People died. And you know what's very serious is my eyeshadow palette collection. I mentioned this in the other video, but I'm gonna say it again. Disclaimer, this is not the eyeshadow palette collection of somebody that has a healthy relationship with makeup. This is the eyeshadow palette collection of somebody that has a problem. When you see this eyeshadow palette collection, you'll see why I'm doing a no-buy year. If I acquire any more palettes this year, there's going to be plenty of palettes in my collection that will never get used. I counted these palettes and I believe there was like 102. So I'm going to try to declutter some. I'm going to put some on my Poshmark page. I'm going to give some away. Maybe some of them I'll put in like a little purgatory box. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. I haven't even tried this Great Molasses Disaster beer yet. Ooh. Oh, it's not too crazy. It's very thick. It's an imperial kind of stout kind of beer. 8%, okay. It's an imperial stout with molasses and it's 8%. I was expecting it to be like 13%. I thought it was going to be much crazier, but it's still nice and strong. It's very good. It's going to warm my soul. And please excuse me if I sound a little nasally. Please excuse me if my makeup is rubbed off on my nose. I have been due for a cold for a little while and it's finally come. I know you're not supposed to drink beer while you're sick, but you know, I know this cold is here to stay, so I'm kind of like, fuck it. Eyeshadow palettes are my biggest vice when it comes to my makeup collection. Some people really love lipsticks, some people really love highlighters. I like lipsticks and highlighters, but eyeshadow palettes are my vice, and that is why I have so many of them. Yes, I'm a makeup artist, and I do need a variety of colors and textures for my kit. Every time I bought one of these palettes, I would be like, oh, it's for my kit. I'm going to write it off my taxes. It's for my kit. But my boyfriend called me out a long time ago. It was just like, Kasha, I don't think you're buying these for your kit anymore. I think you're just buying them for fun. And he was right. They stopped being for my kit for a long time ago. Many of them I use a lot in my kit, but many of them are just, there's just too many of them. And that is why we're doing the no-buy year, because we absolutely do not need any more eyeshadow palettes this year. And I'm going to do a bit of a, this is not going to be a very cutthroat declutter, just because I have so many that I just don't get a chance to use them all. I've been better about using some of this stuff, but I'm still not awesome at it. So this year is going to be the year of saving money and getting the most out of my makeup. So without further ado, let me go ahead and show you my glorious, beautiful, large, out of control, insane eyeshadow palette collection. Let's jump into it. Okay guys, before we really kind of take a closer look at my collection, I first wanted to show you how I store my eyeshadow palette collection. This is just like a regular bookshelf in my living room. And up here I store all my like smaller palettes. Down here are all my larger palettes. I've got my Morphe palettes here. Got some Natasha Denona, Violet Voss, Juvia's Place, Too Faced, Huda Beauty, Pat McGrath, Lorac, Von D down here, one Jeffree Star, one BH Cosmetics. Here's my Sugar Pill palette, my Color Green palette. Up here I have some of my Urban Decay palettes, dupe palettes. All my ColourPop palettes are here. My Shop Hush and Bad Habit and Okalon Beauty palettes are right here. Here is where I keep my Anastasia eyeshadow palettes. And then I have a lot of little odds and ends down here. A couple drugstore palettes right here, a couple smaller palettes. Down here I have a bunch of like BoxyCharm palettes that I've gotten over the years. Couple Makeup Forever palettes, couple one's Profusion and one is Rimmel. Oh, and my Visart palettes over here too. I have one The Balm palette, one Makeup Geek. So that's my basic setup of my eyeshadow palettes. And I think I'm gonna go down on the floor and just talk about them all individually. Okay guys, I just wanted to quickly hit you up with some ancient palettes from high school that I still have, and I'm gonna be putting straight into the trash. So I've got this like Destroyed Milani palette. This Hot Topic palette was really special to me during a part of my life, but these shadows have shitty pigmentation, and this palette is at least, oh god, I graduated high school 10 years ago. I need to throw that shit away. These are all from high school. Yeah, these are all ancient. This one I think I got from my aunt, who herself had it for like 5 years. So that has to go straight into the trash. Oh my gosh, there was a moment in high school where these like cream shadows were all the rage. These are so disgusting, I have to throw them away. Just wanted to share that with you real quick. I think that's all of them. Yeah, seeing them like this kind of shows you how insane this all is, isn't it? It's kind of crazy. What a pretty little collage I've just made, by the way. This might be the thumbnail. Yeah, this is my giant eyeshadow palette collection, and let's go through it one by one. But first, let me go ahead and I just did this for effect. Did it work? Did the effect work? But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about what's here. First of all, I think there's only like a handful of things in here that I've paid full price for. I think the original Naked palette, this is my first ever palette that I ever bought. This might be one of the only palettes I ever bought full price. I haven't opened this up in a while, and it just kind of brings back memories, man. The reason I've kind of let this kind of collection get out of hand is because I always had cool sales on deck, and I'm not like a big deal influencer. I've actually had to pay my own money for most of these things, albeit that the vast majority of these palettes I bought at a discount, or there was a couple things I got in my Sephora Gladys, but not a ton. And yeah, let's go ahead and talk about what's here and what I'm going to be keeping, what I'm going to be trying to be using more in 2019. And as you can see, this is enough eyeshadow palettes. This is definitely enough. So this is why I'm doing a no-buy year this year. I'm trying to use these eyeshadow palettes. There's lots of them. And I certainly don't need any more. Not until at least some of these go bad and I have to replace them or do something else. But I'm gonna go ahead and break down this collection by what it is and how I got it, and if it's on the chopping block or not, or if it's one of my favorites. Let's go ahead and start talking about eyeshadow palettes. One of my favorite things to talk about. And yeah, this is excessive, but you know, in my personal experience, I love watching overly excessive eyeshadow palette collection videos, so I hope you do too. I hope I'm contributing to the YouTube universe by sharing my excessive eyeshadow palette collection. I promise I'm gonna make really good use of it this year, and I promise not to add to it this year. So, I hope you enjoy this. Let's go ahead and talk about some eyeshadow palettes. Cheers! Okay, I think the way I've decided to do this is to loosely kind of do it at alphabetical order. Whenever I'm inspired to group certain things together, I shall do that. So, let's go ahead and start with Ace Beauté. This is a palette that I got in my BoxyCharm, and this was one of my favorite palettes I ever got in a BoxyCharm. These colors are super pigmented. I really enjoyed using this. I have done some pretty beautiful looks with this. I especially love this like peachy kind of color. The red is really beautiful. The shimmery pink is really beautiful. The pigmentation is just very impressive for this palette. I would like to get some more stuff from Ace Beauté one day, but right now I am on a no-buy year, so... Alamar Cosmetiques, another BoxyCharm palette that was so impressive. Oh, I love this palette so much and I was so happy to get it in BoxyCharm. Kathleen Lights was really talking this palette up and she was making me all excited and wanting to get it. But yeah, every single one of these shadows is awesome. Like, it just swatches, like, the way it swatches is pretty unreal, actually. And it goes on the eyes pretty nicely. Some quick little passes right there. And the mattes are really nice too. You gotta build up the mattes a little bit, but totally do the thing as well. They're really blendable, really creamy. This is an awesome palette. Definitely holding on to that. Hope to use a ton more this year. Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is one of my favorite eyeshadow palette formulas, and I have 6 eyeshadow palettes from her. I also have at least 5 highlighting palettes from her that you can see in my face palette video. But, you know, let's go ahead and start off with Modern Renaissance. This is probably like the cult, well-known palette here. This is probably the palette I've used the most out of my Anastasia eyeshadow palette collection. She's currently in my Project Pan as well, and she is a team player in my kit for sure. I use her in a kit a ton. I especially love Antique Bronze for smoking out the lower lash line. I used it a little bit today because the eyeshadows I was using were hard to blend out, and these are super easy to blend out. This is a very soft, blendable formula, loosely pressed. Very much love it. And entering it into my Project Pan has given me new love to it too. It's very dependable, very versatile, very pretty, very good. Modern Renaissance. Another new palette that's like a perfect companion to that is Soft Glam. I got this last year. I immediately put it into my kit and it's been getting used a ton in my kit. I've used it a handful of times just on myself because these shimmers are stunning. And this is just a beautiful palette to have in your makeup kit. It's a beautiful palette to use for bridal as is Modern Renaissance. I actually really love Modern Renaissance because it makes me think of art history. You know, I have an art history minor and I remember Venetian paintings and using red ochre and primavera. It was a common name used for different paintings from that era, and you know, raw cyan and burnt orange and tempera, golden ochre are colors that you might use. You know, I don't think a lot of people appreciate how smart the colors are and the inspiration is behind this palette. They just understand it to be a very good palette, and yeah, that's true. It's true. And this is a beautiful companion palette. This is just more of like an awesome palette for artists. Like, I really appreciate products that are made for artists. Let me just go ahead and swatch Sultry for you and let you know how stunning it swatches. This color Mulberry is a matte, but it's just really nice matte. I don't know if you can see how much I've dipped into it, but that's probably my second most used palette. Or actually, it's actually pretty much up there with my Master palette by Mario from Anastasia. When I first got this palette, I put it in my kit and I was using it a ton. There's a pretty good dip on Fifth Avenue, but the texture of these shadows is like some of the softest shadows I've ever touched in my life. I wasn't gonna get this palette because it's very neutral and kind of boring, but when you touch it, especially when you touch it with your fingers and you swatch it, it's just like the most unreal formula. It's just so soft. So this is another one I'm definitely keeping. It swatches so beautifully. You know what? I'd like to do a look where I just kind of finger paint these shades onto my eyes. Claudia has not been used. I can't believe it. And Isabel's barely been used, but all the other colors get used a ton in this palette. Bronx not so much either, just because random greens kind of tend to get forgotten about. This is a beautiful palette. Formula is pretty unreal. Definitely keeping it in my collection for a while. Next most used is probably my Artist palette from Anastasia. This is not something you can get anymore, but I've had this for years at this point, like 3 years at least. But I still reach for it once in a while because it's got some pretty unique colors in it, especially Aubergine. I will pull this palette out just to get Aubergine. I also love Dusty Rose in this palette. This, the yellow in here, not many brands can do a good yellow. This yellow is pretty decent. And it's probably the reason that I ended up buying this palette. You gotta build it up. It definitely benefits from having like a white base underneath it. Orange You Fancy is beautiful too. It's starting to dry out. Definitely holding on to that. I'm not trying to declutter any of my Anastasia palettes, not yet. This is actually probably my least used, but I bought it and I've held on to it over the years because Pink Champagne is such an exceptional color in this palette. Really shimmery and really stunning. When this came out, there weren't a lot of shadows that were like this. This is a very unique shade, but now I'm realizing it's not really... This shadow can be duped. But the way it like looks on my finger is just kind of like stunning and unreal. And it's like so shiny. It's crazy shiny. Let me swatch Blossom next to it. Pales in comparison. Blossom is no kind of stunner. Very satiny kind of looking shadow. I've barely used a lot of these shades. I use Spirit Rock a lot. Isla was something that I used in a mermaid look once that was great. Treasure actually has quite a bit of a dip in it. It's a great inner corner highlight. I'm keeping it around, I think mostly for the posterity, for the novelty of it. Just because you can't get this palette anymore and it was such an important palette. You know, this might be the palette that kind of put Anastasia eyeshadows on the map. Did I even say what this was? This is a self-made palette, by the way. Love her. She's sticking around. Last up, we got my Anastasia Subculture palette. I've barely used it, but you know, it is a tricky formula, but I like it. I figured out how to use it. Like I say, it's tricky, but if you're somebody that's kind of familiar with the different textures and how to get them to work, and you're interested in a challenge, you might enjoy this palette. I mean, I certainly do. I want to go ahead and swatch Edge. I don't think I've swatched Edge yet. That's a beautiful mustard. I should use that more often. That's gorgeous. And I just want to swatch. And these are really, really soft mattes. Like, they're just soft to the touch. I wonder if that's what they were going for when they were making this palette. Dawn is probably the color I've used the most. It's extremely soft. It makes me kind of laugh that when this palette came out, everybody was just on the internet was just going nuts because they were just digging their brushes into it and just hitting pan by swirling it around. I was like, well, yeah, of course. Like, the whole idea of these shadows is to make them soft, but whatever. What do I know? Okay, so next up, I think I'm going to share with you my Bad Habit palettes. And while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and talk about all my other Shop Hush palettes. First up is my Aphrodite Bad Habit palette. This is really beautiful. And it's a dupe for the original Huda Beauty Rose Gold palette. I used to have that palette and I returned it and I actually exchanged it for the Desert Dusk when the Desert Dusk came out. Really smart decision because I bought this palette and the texture of these shadows is similar, but not as chunky and adheres better, but still really pretty. One thing I noticed about those shadows in the Huda is that like you had to kind of spread them a certain way to get them to shine. You gotta do a similar thing to these, but it's not quite as much of a challenge. Yeah, you definitely have to spread them out. They kind of flake. Once you get them to work, they are stunning. I thought the Huda palette was the same. A lot of people complained about that formula. It was way too difficult to work with. I am not somebody that's too scared of a challenge. But as you can see, it swatches really nicely, really pretty shadows. I do think the matte shadows in this palette are like way more blendable than the ones in the Huda palette. That is the Aphrodite palette. Oh girl, you got a new battery? Okay, so I originally got like a little 6-pack of the little Anastasia dupe palettes, but 2 of them I gave away. One of them I gave away to a subscriber, one of them I gave to my cousin. But these are like the little Obsessions palette dupes. Afterglow was kind of a dupe of the Coral Obsessions. I loved this palette when I first got it. I was using it all the time and it is beautiful. Yeah, maybe I will give it a little swatch-a-rooney. Yeah, that's probably the color that I went in for most. And yeah, I was just kind of loving these like little corally tones. After Charge is like the Gemstones Obsessions one, the general one. I have dipped into this one a few times, but I not enough. Seems really interesting though. Definitely want to use it a lot more. For an $8 palette, this is pretty awesome. Very kind of unique shades, really pretty. This is like the Smoky Obsessions dupe. I don't know if the formula is quite as good as in the Smoky Obsessions, but it's really nice in this one too. Really shiny, beautiful shimmers. I've only used this like a handful of times, maybe up to 5 times, but this was really nice. And this is like the Mauve Obsessions kind of dupe here too. I guess I'll swatch this little guy right here. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, really nice, like really dependable formula, and the price point is awesome. This is the Bad Habit Luna palette. Can you guess what it's trying to dupe? I've used this 2 or 3 times, but I still haven't gotten a sense of whether or not I like it. I don't really like that purple at all. And it's not quite the same as the Norvita palette. They're pretty good at duping these palettes over a Bad Habit, but I don't know if I really like this one. And this is a palette I haven't really touched. I think the only color I've used, this is the Bad Habit Aura palette, and the only palette I've really used is this one. This is really stunning. Like, it swatches pretty amazingly too. That and this color were the 2 star kind of players, and this swatch is okay, but it could really absolutely benefit from a white base. And I definitely want to use this a lot more. I haven't gotten a really good sense of what this palette is like just yet. And since we're talking about Shop Hush, let's go ahead and talk about my other Shop Hush palettes, which is, I just have the 2. It's my Amazon Clay palette from Okalon. And yeah, I used it a handful of times. Didn't blow me out of the water. It's very neutral. I tried to, yeah, I've used this palette this color quite a bit, and I have so many colors that I just kind of like it. And this is a kind of a dupe for the Tarte Amazonian Clay palette. Very similar, but all the shades are a little bit too similar for me. And if you're interested in trying this palette out, I have it for, I think, like $5 on my Shop Hush page. So if you want to pick it up from me, it's there. And last palette I have from Face Candy, this was on the Shop Hush website, is the Atlantis palette. You guys, this palette is awesome. This might be my favorite Shop Hush palette. This isn't like a dupe of anything particular, but it is kind of inspired by the April Fool's palette that Tarte posted about. And I did a couple of like icy wintry looks when I was doing my blue theme for my 100 Days of Makeup. And this palette was so handy during that moment in time. They swatch so amazingly. And this palette was just an essential player. The blue is beautiful, but it's like really sparkly. Like, it doesn't, from far away, it doesn't swatch so great, but like the sparkle in it is just killer. And this navy kind of color is so killer. That is amazing. Oh my gosh. And this like aquamarine blue is intense and beautiful. This is a really awesome palette, guys. Highly recommend it. If you're interested in trying Face Candy, this is the palette you gotta try. Okay, so alphabetically ordered, next brand would be The Balm. I have 2 The Balm palettes, one face palette and this eyeshadow palette. And when I first got it, I really enjoyed it. Like, this is a really nice, kind of smart, smart layout for this palette. This is the Meet Matchmaker palette. These shimmers are really beautiful and the mattes are really beautiful. It's just a really good palette. Let's go ahead and swatch Kate Chavran. Really pretty kind of shimmers. I think what's impressive about The Balm is that their shimmers and their mattes are equally good. And the price point's really great too. I got this at IMATS, and I think I only paid like $15 for this palette, so really awesome. I really love this palette. Holding on to that still. I guess the next brand would be BH Cosmetics. If we're going alphabetically ordered, this is the Take Me Back to Brazil palette. I love this palette at first. As you can see, this is a really exciting looking palette. It looks beautiful. But some of these colors just don't kind of give me the pigmentation I want. These kind of Transformer colors are more or less garbage. Yeah, like, can you even see what the swatch is like? Nothing. I had high hopes for this yellow. This yellow's okay. It's better than my Hot Topic yellow. Would definitely benefit from a base. The greens and the blues are okay. The pinks are okay. But not my favorite palette. It doesn't really stick out. That pink is actually okay. It's an okay pink. Yeah, that pink is not doing it for me. The pigmentation is inconsistent to say the least. If this palette was pigmented, it would be an amazing palette, but it's just not. It's not really that pigmented. This might be going in the purgatory box because it's just not a very good palette. And it's a shame because I talked about in my last video that I'm so in love with carnival culture. You know, we got the little carnival girl with her feathers and stuff. It's just so sad that anytime that a palette is inspired by Mardi Gras or Carnival or masquerades, it's like the concept is amazing, but the palette itself is lacking. So that's going in the purgatory box, I think. Okay, so for staying alphabetical, the next category would be Colored Rain. First up is the palette I'm wearing on my eyes today. This is the Queen of Hearts palette. I haven't used this palette at all. I haven't used it enough at all. I bought it because Stephanie Nicole said it was her favorite palette of the year. Every time I use it, I find it hard to blend with, but I still haven't given up on it. I still want to test it out some more. This is the Cheers to Beauty palette. As you can see, it's a really exciting looking palette. The shimmers are actually pretty insane. Let me go ahead and swatch this silver for you. This silver is completely insane. Are you ready? Look at that. I double swatch it and it just kind of kicks up. But it's incredibly reflective. This green is really beautiful too. I think the star player of this palette is the silver. But I'd like to use this a lot more. If you look really closely, it's barely been touched. I haven't really touched it at all. It's really exciting and I'd like to use it a little bit more. The shimmers are really nice. This is a new addition to the family. As you can see, it's still in the cardboard. This is the Vivid Pigments palette from Colored Rain. Let's go ahead and show you what's inside. I've heard nothing but wonderful things about this. I am not going to swatch it just yet because I don't want to take the plastic off, but that's what it looks like. Very beautiful Brights palette. And I've seen some really amazing looks done online with this, so maybe I'll do a first impressions video with this. Keeping up with the theme of alphabetical order is my ColourPop palettes next up. So, let's see, what's oldest? I think the first ColourPop palette that I ever bought, these two together, but I got this is the Yes Please palette. This is kind of like Natasha Denona dupe. Really pretty palette. I used it a lot when I first got it. I think this palette kind of like screams Leo. Like this is the color story of Leo. Just like golds and oranges and reds and just sexy kind of bright colors. I need to use it more because I feel like it's drying up. That seems like strangely drier. The red is actually pretty nice. And even the yellow is pretty nice. It's surprising. Definitely holding on to that for a little while. My next oldest ColourPop palette is the All I See Is Magic palette. Really, I think, underrated palette, really pretty. But I don't reach for this one enough. I keep looking at it and being like, I need to use that palette more. It's really pretty. Like the shimmers are super nice in this palette. For the price, ColourPop's formula is I guess I'm gonna kind of put this in the purgatory box. I've had this for a while at this point, and I haven't used it enough. So I need to use it more. I try to really give this palette a hard shot. This is the You Had Me at Hello palette. This is the one that has the secret message underneath. It's just got sticker on it. But it was nice. I don't know, I'm just not really inspired by this palette. I don't really pick it up that often. And the formula is okay, but like I said, I don't pick it up that often. Looks like a really pretty highlight color though. So I think that I'm gonna put that in the purgatory box. I brought this on the cruise with me when I did the cruise last year. But I only did my makeup once. I wasn't super inspired. This palette I bought because of Andrea, and I've barely touched it. She says that this is one of her favorite ColourPop palettes. I barely pick it up because it's just I don't know, these colors don't really appeal to me. I don't know. It could be really pretty. I need to use it more, so this is gonna just stay in the stay pile. This is the Element of Surprise palette. I got this in a BoxyCharm from ColourPop. I thought this was really pretty. I think this shade right here is especially really interesting. I'm just wiping, look at me just wiping off shadows on my fingers. Yeah, that was a really pretty shimmer from ColourPop. And this matte that's kind of like brownish, I think that's a really interesting color. It's just like a nice brown. Alright, I gotta clean this arm so I can do more swatches. This is one of my favorite ColourPop palettes. This is the I Think I Love You palette. And this is just like a better, smarter, more modern version of Urban Decay Original Naked. I think the mattes are super blendable. The shimmers are really stunning. Black in here is really good too. The mattes are really kind of very versatile, usable mattes. My hand's still a little bit wet from wiping down my stuff. And the gold is really kind of a stunner, isn't she? Oh wow. This color is a super awesome like glitter inner highlight kind of color, but it's super blingy. This is an awesome palette, one of my favorites. The Kathleen Lights Dream Street ColourPop palette is also one of my favorites. The shimmers in here are really interesting and different, and the mattes are really blendable and interesting and different too. This is a really great neutral palette, but also at the same time, it's like the most perfect balance of like essential staple mattes and like super interesting shimmers, like interesting shades. Really well thought out palette. I think Kathleen did a fucking phenomenal job with this palette, and the shimmers are super interesting. Like this is like a champagne color, but it's got like a gold shift. I think Stardust was another one of the crazy shimmers. This is like a little bit of a fiery kind of looking shimmer. Twinkle is amazing. These are amazing colors. Kaleidoscope. I also appreciate that this beautiful corally red color was there. That I think is really pretty, and it swatches beautifully. I just counted all my ColourPop palettes and there's only 9. So that's unfortunately not an even number for doing a review video, but here's another really awesome palette that I love. This is the Shayla X ColourPop Perception palette. I've heard that this is a dupe for the Urban Decay On the Wanderlust or On the Run palette. I've only used this a handful of times, but this is really fun. I've loved it a lot so far. Head and swatch this little purple shade. Very pretty. ColourPop's great. You can just kind of depend on them to have really a nice formula. So this is the ColourPop Perception. This one is the Zodiac palette from Kathleen Lights. As you can see, I still haven't taken it out of the box, but I'll go ahead and show it to you. It looks absolutely gorgeous. I haven't swatched it yet. I don't want to touch it yet because it's still like very much new in my collection. Maybe I'll use it in a first impressions or something like that. Oh, so I've got one little CoverGirl palette. I got this from my boyfriend. I used this in my little Boyfriend Buys My Makeup video. This is actually a really nice palette. The shimmers were quite nice in here. You know what? Let's go ahead and do a little swatcheroo. Pretty good contender for such a little dinky little drugstore palette from the dollar store. Next up is D for Dose of Colors. This is my only Dose of Colors palette. This is the Desi X Katy Friendcation palette. I've barely used this. Just got this back in November. I used it, I think I only used it once. I think I've only used it once. The look I did was pretty, but I did see that the shadows were kind of breaking up on me. And that could be because of the primer I was using, but so pretty. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's very nice, very nice. Samantha Ravndal did this cool thing where she took the pink and blended it on top of the blue and made purple. Really pretty. Definitely have to use this a lot more. This seems like it's a very smart palette too. You know, some of these collaborations I really kind of trust because influencers making them really want to make a cohesive palette that they themselves would want to use over and over and over. So you've got like a lot of great staple mattes. Rosy kind of matte here. Looks pretty interesting. Really nice and blendable kind of mattes. I'm definitely holding on to this because I need to use it more. So far I feel like I haven't used it enough. The first time I used it, it broke up a lot on my lids, but that could be the fault of my primer. So I've got to use that a little bit more. Next up would be E, and I've got my e.l.f. palette here. This is the Rose Gold palette. This is currently on my Poshmark page. The pigmentation is Not what I'm looking for. It's in a bundle of all drugstore eyeshadow palettes on my Poshmark page. I was really excited to get this. My boyfriend got it for me for Christmas. I wanted to see if it would be a dupe for the Urban Decay Naked 3 palette. Not quite a dupe. If you're interested in checking that out, it's over on my Poshmark page if you want to pick it up in a little bundle of all drugstore eyeshadow palettes. Okay, I think next up would be H. So we're going to go into Huda Beauty. This is probably my older Huda Beauty palette. This is the Desert Dust palette. Really pretty. I do use this. I have used this a handful of times. Need to use it more, but this is very much a very kind of specific kind of look eyeshadow palette, but it is very beautiful. I think the star of the show is Twilight. Looks like that. Very reflective, very mysterious, kind of beautiful. This is the color Turkish Delight. I bought this because I traded in my old palette, Huda Beauty Rose Gold Textured palette, because it was giving me lots of problems, and I figured I'm interested in trying this one, but I probably shouldn't have both. And that was a pretty smart decision because this one's really awesome. I love this one. This is the One Obsessions palette that I got. This is the Electric Obsessions, and this one's awesome. Like, these are such blendable shadows. It's hard to say which one's the star of the show in this palette. They all swatch amazingly. I think the red in here is really awesome. This is the blue. It's a little bit soft. It does have some kick up, but it does swatch really beautifully. I was actually picking this palette up a lot because this red has a bit of a pinkish undertone, which was making it perfect for a lot of looks I was doing this Halloween. This neon orange is nice. Actually one of the better neon oranges I think in the world. But yeah, holding on to that because that's pretty good. It has come in handy quite a bit over the Halloween season. This is a new edition. Just got this back in December. This is the Huda Beauty Nude palette. This doesn't seem too exciting when you look at it, but these shimmers have such an unique texture. When you swatch them, they're so different than how they look in the pan. Like, this is kind of like a lavender shimmer kind of color. This is the color Daydream. Here we got the color Fantasy, which is like more pinky. This one's kind of got like a green holographic gold kind of deal going on. Very interesting palette, very interesting looking shimmers, very beautiful. One of my coworkers pressured me into buying this. Thanks, Anthony. And then he didn't even buy it himself. But I'm kind of glad that I have it because those shimmers are so interesting. However, I do believe that pressed glitters are garbage. I've tried to use them just for the sake of me having this palette, and I should probably use them since I have them. In the future, Huda, maybe skip the pressed glitters and do another one of these amazing shimmers. Like, those shimmers are super unique and very cool. I actually kind of was attracted to the Laura Lee Nudie Patootie palette, and this is like a better version of the Nudie Patootie palette. So, love that palette, holding on to that. So next up it would be J, and this is my only Jeffree Star palette. This is the most forgotten palette in my collection. This is my Beauty Killer palette. Oh gosh, I bought this palette, used it a handful of times, didn't really like it, and have barely touched it since. Like, this is definitively one of the least exciting hot pinks in my collection. I've had a handful of hot pinks throughout my collection. This is like one of the sadder pigmentations of hot pink that I have in my collection. Courtney is a nice color. That's actually really nice and blendable, a really good, nice transition color. I have so much guilt with this palette because I keep saying to myself that I'm gonna give it another shot, use it some more, but I never really like this palette that much. Some of these colors seem like they would be nice, but never really were. I don't know, never really used them. Expensive, I think it would be nice. I think the top layer might have dried up because I haven't touched it for so long. But this is definitely going to go in the purgatory box. I'm going to try to, if I don't use it by the next time I show off my eyeshadow palette collection, it's going to be decluttered. I don't know, I'm thinking about maybe even going ahead and listing it on my Poshmark, see if it sells. Next up is my Juvia's Place palettes. It looks like I've got 6 here, so that's more than I thought I had. My most used one is definitely my Masquerade Mini palette. Really beautiful palette. get lots of use of it whenever I'm going for like a shimmery, glam, kind of colorful look. This is my go-to palette, and this is really smart because it's got the colors and it's got the more neutral shades at the bottom here too. Very pigmented, really beautiful. Let's swatch this little green to give you a little sense of what it looks like. Super poppy, really beautiful. The Zulu is probably my next most used. It's actually barely been used. I think I've used it twice. You can probably see why I was so attracted to it. It just looks gorgeous. They're all the star of the show, but let's go ahead and swatch this other green. A nice little lime green shimmer, very beautiful. The Saharan I bought in that same shopping trip. I haven't used this a ton. I think I've used it once or twice, but also really beautiful. This seems like a really kind of sophisticated brights palette. You know, it's got some bright moments, but this is a palette for a queen, I think I would say. Beautiful little orangey red shade. This is the Nubian by Juvia's Place. It's more of a neutral palette. I think I've used this once or twice. I gotta use it more. Holding on to all these palettes because I just haven't used them enough. Ooh, really interesting shadow. It's got a pink reflect. This guy right here. These two guys are still in their packaging. I've got the Freak palette by Juvia's and the Warrior palette by Juvia's. I'm not going to take them out of their boxes right now just because I want them to stay a little bit, you know, sealed until I'm ready to use them. Keep them nice and fresh. Okay, next up is my Kat Von D palettes. And you know, I've briefly touched about my stance on Kat Von D, but right now I'm not getting rid of any of these palettes because even though I'm not purchasing from Kat Von D right now, I don't think a good idea to just get rid of palettes that I enjoy using. But you know, this is my oldest Kat Von D palette right here. This is the Serpentina palette, and it's my least used. When I first got this palette, I used to use this color Ankh a lot. This was a great color to use to smoke out colors, but even so, I just don't use this palette very much. I've used each color a handful of times. I haven't used this pigment enough either. This like antique kind of gold pigment. I guess my favorite color, Blood Milk, is now available in a single. It's kind of like a browny, rusty kind of red, but my favorite color is Ankh in this palette. It's got this it's a black with like a gold shimmer, and it was really nice. It's make that looks instantly smoky. My next oldest palette is my Metal Matte palette, and I came really close to giving up with this palette this year because I was just not reaching for it ever. But recently I discovered that I really was into mossy green looks, so I was really loving this color. And the reason I never picked up the Pastel Goth palette is because I had these two colors, or these three colors, and between these three colors and like other brights I have throughout my collection, I felt like I could dupe the Pastel Goth palette. But yeah, I think I've used this a total of 10 times. This blue is a really beautiful shimmer. Twinkle's like the only shimmer that's not vegan apparently. Honestly, I think the color that is keeping me keep this palette is moss, because I don't really have a mossy green that's quite like it anywhere else in my collection. I looked. I couldn't quite find one that was quite like it, so holding on to that palette still. My next oldest is my Saint and Sinner palette, and I do pick this up occasionally. I really hope that Kat Von D makes a statement soon about her bad behavior, because I want to go back to recommending her stuff, because some of her products are seriously nice. These Transformer shades on top are interesting. I want to use them more. Let's put this guy on top of this Juvia's color. Interesting. Very pretty. Some really unique colors in this palette are this gold. I don't have gold that quite like it anywhere else in my collection. It's like this very yellow gold, almost kind of greenish. That's really pretty. This lime is really pretty. Ashes is really pretty. Martyr is really pretty. I really like this palette. I'm holding on to it because I'm still looking to use it some more. And next up is my Metal Matte Mini palette. I've barely used this as well. I've got to use this more. I was really excited about this palette, but I primarily bought it because it has a lot of the Metal Crush shadow formulas up here, and I was mostly interested in Thunderstruck, which is Supposedly a really versatile color, can be used as a highlight, and I was really interested in like raw power too. And I need to use this more. I think I've only used this like 2 times. Next up is the Divine Kat Von D palette, and these colors are really good too. Pink Flamingos. It's interesting how they chose to make Pink Flamingos into a green color, but it's a really beautiful kind of reflective green color. Is it similar to my Juvia's Place colors? Yeah, I bet if you mix those together you could probably get that one. But I really did enjoy this color scheme. I am a fan of John Waters. I love the little John Waters callbacks in here, like Babs, Hard Magic, Baltimore is where John Waters is from. Waters is obviously John Waters' last name. Filthy, like the big theme of his work is filth and yuckiness. Pink Flamingos is one of his yuckiest films that he've ever made. Female Trouble was another. I haven't seen Female Trouble, but I want to. And Hairspray was obviously his biggest hit. I'm surprised they didn't have one called Crybaby. That's my favorite John Waters flick. I love Crybaby. And I think this palette is actually really nice, really good. Gives good justice to Divine and John Waters. And Kat Von D, can you please just like vaccinate your kid? I want to recommend your things, and I want to use your things without guilt. God damn it. Speaking of problematic people, I've got one palette from Laura Lee Los Angeles. This is the Party Animal palette. Very pretty, very bright, really interesting looking. However, super similar to the Urban Decay Electric palette. So yeah, if you have this palette, the Urban Decay Electric, you don't really need this palette. Can you see what I'm talking about here? Can you see? The Urban Decay palette is way more blendable than this one. This one's a little bit chalky. The orange is pretty interesting. You can build it up and you can get some decent pigmentation. And this is a party color. No. Let me compare it next to this Thrash color from Urban Decay. Obviously more pigmented than Laura Lee. I might just list this on Poshmark actually because I already have the Urban Decay Electric palette, so I didn't need to hold on to this. Okay, so I've got a couple little drugstore palettes to start with L. I've got this little matte, LA Colors matte shadows. These are nice, these are okay. My boyfriend got me this as like a little gift. I think we were living in LA and I was sick and he went out and got cough medicine, and while he was at the store he got me some little eyeshadow palettes just to cheer me up. I thought that was sweet. Oops, I broke it. Cool. I keep these in my special fix kit just in case I ever need like a black shadow, some matte shadows, you know. Just like kicking around. Next up are my Lorac palettes. I've got 3 here. These 2, this is the Lorac one. This is currently in my Project Pan and I'm holding on to it because I do get a lot of use of this in my Pro Kit, and these mattes are super blendable and easy to work with. Love this. And also the Lorac Pro 2. Both of these are really awesome color like palettes to use for bridal and in a kit because it's mostly neutral shimmers and neutral mattes, and they're very versatile for like a wide range of looks. And the pops of color in here are the only kind of pops of colors that are likely to kind of pop up on a just regular kind of shoe or prom look. Like for instance, I had a prom girl this season that originally came to me wanting a neutral look and then at the last moment wanted blue, so this navy color totally kind of saved me. And these are also in my Project Pan this year. I'd like to actually replace these because I still love them. I'd like to keep them along in my kit. I think they're really awesome. I'd like to keep them. Once all these palettes expire, I'd like to replace these and keep them in my kit because they are so versatile. And both of these palettes are really versatile, but especially the Pro 2. I think this is a really smart palette. You rarely see grays in palettes, and this chrome is really interesting. And it's really kind of a soft, shimmery formula. Mattes are really soft too, so keeping both of those. Then I got just one Mega Pro palette. This is the Mega Pro 4. I've barely used this, but I am gonna keep it because I do enjoy the looks I've been able to get out of it when I did get a chance to use them. There's a couple of very unique shadows in here that I don't have anywhere else in my collection. This peacock blue is really beautiful, but you know, when I used it last time, it kind of like got into my eyes and it hurt my eyes. Is that weird? It like made my eyes sting. I don't know. I thought that was weird. Fairy Tale is a super pretty color too. Lots of really pretty colors in here. Okay, my camera overheated, so we gotta move things along. So next up we've got my Maybelline The Rock Nudes palette. I used this in my boyfriend buys my makeup video. I enjoyed it for that, but I don't think I'm gonna enjoy it any further, so that's going into the purgatory pile. This next up would be my one and only Makeup Geek palette. This is my Makeup Geek / Manny MUA collab palette. I thought that this was a really nice palette. I don't care for Manny MUA. This is my only experience with Makeup Geek shadows. They were really nice, and I thought that this was a really well thought out palette. I often reach for this palette just to use this warm brown. This is a really good warm brown. I really like it for that. Let's give it a little swatcheroonie. Give you guys a little taste of this palette. Really nice. I got two Makeup Forever palettes right here. Oh, geez. I think these are both gonna have to go into the purgatory pile. Even though these are both really nice palettes, I used this one quite a bit when I was going to cinema makeup school. This one is you really gotta dig deep to get it to be pigmented now. It's getting to be old. It's getting to be like 3 years old at this point. But this is the palette 9 Artist Shadow palette. It's nice. Makeup Forever shadows are really good, but this is getting to be pretty old. This one's even, I bought this after I bought that first one, but this one's an older kind of edition of the Makeup Forever palettes. Still really nice. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put these on my Poshmark page because I'm just not reaching for these enough. They're just getting old, man. The blue in this one's like really similar to the blue in that one. Those are my two Makeup Forever palettes. Find them on my Poshmark. Those are... Oh, I forgot to mention my Crown Brushes palette. Here's all my Morphe palettes that I've got going here. This is my Crown Brushes palette. Stephanie Nicole talked about in the video once that like she believes that Morphe was just rebranding Crown Brushes shadows. This is my Crown Brushes shadow palette. I haven't used this nearly enough. Like, I bought this at IMATS in Toronto in 2016. I just haven't really picked it up. Seems nice though. Like, these shadows swatch okay, for sure. Some of them do. This one doesn't really do much. I don't know, some of these swatch pretty nicely. That green swatched really well. It doesn't get used enough, that's for sure. Well, that's going into the purgatory pile. It doesn't really get used enough. That's the problem with this palette, but that's my Crown Brushes palette. I got two Morphe palettes during a sale on Outlook many years ago. This is the 35B palette. I got this for $15 on Outlook. It was a $15 well spent. I use this a lot, and because I have this palette, that's why I haven't gotten the James Charles palette yet, but this is really nice. I'd like some of the pigmentation to be stronger, but it's okay. It does the job. Most of these colors are pretty true to color. My next oldest palette is my 35W palette. This is just like a warm neutrals palette. I bought this before I got the 35OS, and this was very useful to me when I was doing my first skull makeup. Maybe I'll insert a like picture of it onto the screen, but this was really helpful for that. And occasionally whenever I just need like dark eyeshadows, like matte eyeshadows, I will reach for this palette to put those in. This is a pretty versatile palette and I enjoy it. This is the 35S palette. This is such a shame. I bought this one day because I needed to spend an extra $15 to get free shipping, and I've never used it. I've never used this palette. I've only swatched it. Some of these colors look pretty exciting, they look pretty fun, but I have so much guilt around this palette. It's kind of crazy. So this is going into a purgatory box, and it will be decluttered if I don't use it by the next time one of these videos comes around. This is my 35O palette. This is the cult Morphe palette that everybody cares about. I haven't used it a ton. I think the reason there was so much hype around this palette is because it was just a moment in time where everybody's really into warm neutrals, and this is such a warm neutral palette. It's got like every warm neutral color you could think of. It's okay. Honestly, I can't even go ahead and say it's okay because I don't use it enough. I might actually put that in the Purgatory box as well because I just don't use it enough. It just needs to get used more. Next up is my Jaclyn Hill palette for Morphe. This gets a little bit more love than some of the other Morphe palettes, but I still don't use it enough either, I don't think. Really nice palette, really versatile, blendable, but like not too soft, not too much kick up. Really good palette overall. Need to use it way more, that's for sure. And this is a new palette in my collection. As you can see, it's still in the plastic. I'm not gonna take it out of the packaging because you can look this up online. This is the Boss Mood palette. It's the one with like the crazy greens and the yellows and stuff. I'm gonna keep it nice and sealed up for a little while longer. Okay, so I guess next up is Natasha Denona. I just have my 3 Natasha Denona palettes here. This summer I purchased both the green blue and this is the purple blue palette. I've only used it like once or twice, but I've loved it so far. It's still pretty new in my collection, so I really just kind of need to use it a little bit more. Maybe I should just swatch it for you just so you understand the appeal of this little guy. Actually, that wasn't the most exciting shadow I could have showed you out of that palette. Mattes look pretty exciting. Oh yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful little purple matte color right there. I've actually used this green brown one a little bit more than the purple one. There's a lot of really beautiful shadows here. Like I recently used this green and I look and it was just stunning. It was the star of the show. Here, let me swatch it up here one more time. This gunmetal color is pretty crazy and amazing. It's beautiful. And this silver is amazing too. Look at that. Natasha Denona's shimmers are kind of to die for. And therefore I recently picked up the Natasha Gold palette. Oh gosh, this is one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection. This is so beautiful. Okay, there's a couple shadows in here that I specifically bought this palette for. First of all, this mustardy matte color is really beautiful and it's just like the most perfect little mustard color. And the shimmers are really nice and soft. This greenish kind of like gold reflect color is just everything. And it's like a beautiful transformer color. Like you can just kind of do some seriously unique looks with that. This matte blue is completely insane. This navy blue, you have to kind of dig in. It's one of the most like true matte navy blues in my collection. I really love it for that. And it's absolutely stunning. I've done some extremely gorgeous looks with this palette. And it pairs beautifully with the green palette. Okay, I think I accidentally deleted a clip between wrapping up about how wonderful these Natasha Denona palettes are going into talking about Pat McGrath. Yeah, I will never declutter these. These are some of my most prized possessions. I do have to use this purple palette a lot more. This green palette, I think I talked about this in my January favorites that I just posted. Because I have this palette, I'm not going to need another shimmery green palette for a long, long time. This is stunning and it pairs beautifully with this palette. This is one of my favorite palettes of all times and it's stunning and I love it. And we're going into my next favorite palette. Like these are like my 4 favorite palettes in my collection. This is my Pat McGrath palette. This is... I almost didn't buy this palette. I came really, really close. I'm really glad that I did. It's such... like these shadows are so different. Next clip I'm going to swatch them and I'm going to talk about how special and unique they are. They're amazing transformer shades. And the mattes, I need to use the mattes a lot more. This is pretty much a new palette to me, but the mattes seem like they'd be really nice too. There's my little swatches. I love this palette. We'll never declutter this. Like I'm so glad that I panic bought this little guy right here. Okay, I got a clean slate going and these 3 shades are really special and unique. Like I like to use these 2 shades to kind of just spice up any eye look. Like you put these 2 shades on any eyeshadow look and it's gonna be more interesting looking. Like actually, I don't think the swatches really kind of justify how stunning and reflective these really are. Maybe that one a little bit more. They're coming off in chunks a little bit. This red color is one of my favorite red shadows in the whole world. Ugh. This red is just everything. Oh my gosh, I just want to eat it. It looks so beautiful. Pink shimmer I haven't used a ton, but it's beautiful. Look at those swatches. This is a pretty new thing in my collection. This was in my very last haul that I posted. My like Black Friday haul, I guess I called it. And I haven't really used the mattes a ton. They seem to be very smooth to the touch, so I need to use those a little bit more. Definitely not getting rid of this. This is one of my most prized possessions. This palette is beautiful and holding on to that. Here's a palette from Pretty Vulgar that I got in a BoxyCharm. This is the Nightingale palette, and it's a beautiful cool tone palette. I've only used it, I think, once or twice, but I really love the look that I came up with it. I think I used it in my BoxyCharm unboxing video. It's really nicely pigmented, it's really easy to blend, and I'd like to use it a little bit more. I don't have a ton of like cool tone palettes like this. This is, as you can see, in my giant eyeshadow palette collection, this is one of the more cool toned palettes I have, and I need to use it more, that's for sure. Here's my little BoxyCharm Pure Cosmetics palette. I liked it a lot when I first got it, and I used it a lot when I first got it, but since then, there's just so many palettes that kind of outperform this palette in my collection, so I'm gonna be putting this on my Poshmark page, so check it out over there. I'll sell this either in a bundle or just for pretty cheap if you're interested. Here's my one little Revlon palette. This was featured in my Boyfriend Buys My Makeup video. This is actually kind of a pretty, like, there's some pretty unique, pretty shades in here. I think I'm gonna keep that around just because, I don't know, that's really pretty. I like that. I'm gonna feature these palettes together. I got both of these from my boyfriend for Christmas this Christmas. This is the Rimmel Magnifies Electric Violet collection. That palette looks quite gorgeous. You know what? Let's go ahead and give this green a swatch. Oh, not bad at all. Beautiful. Let's give this purple a swatch. Very nice. Yeah, I'm gonna keep this around because it's brand new. It's from my boyfriend. And I'm featuring it together with this palette because my boyfriend got me both of these palettes for Christmas this year. Oh, this one's still sealed up. Okay, she's open. This also seems like a really nice shimmery palette. It looks like a low-key dupe for Urban Decay Naked. This is not from Rimmel. This is from Profusion Exotic 12 color eyeshadow pan. Ooh. Uh-oh, that's pretty lame pigmentation. Oh no. Let's try this more like antique gold kind of color. Looks okay on my finger. Yeah, that one's a little bit better. This matte looks kind of creamy though. The way that it's pressed is making it look like it's making it look promising. Nice soft matte. Seems to blend nicely. Not too impressive. That might be on the purgatory train soon, just because it's not very impressive, but this one is pretty impressive for a little drugstore palette. Next up, I'm going to show you one of my more proudest possessions. This is my Sugarpill Pro eyeshadow palette. I've got 12 colors here. I also have a single of the Love Plus shadow. The most pigmented, matte, colorful formula, I think, on the market. Let me go ahead and swatch this beautiful green for you. Very beautiful. I think this blue is the one called Kimchi. It's one of their cult shades. Oh yeah, beautiful pigmentation. And this one certainly outperforms the Jeffree Star, like hot pink color. Honestly, this might be one of my favorite yellows on the market. It's hard to get a really good yellow just because yellow is such a light color to begin with. So to get it to be really pigmented is hard. But this is one of the more pigmented colors. It's one of the more promising. And this white is really good too. I wonder if you add white to the yellow. Oh yeah, that makes it nice and lemony. So I love this. I've had this for 2 years, but it's still performing beautifully. So I'm gonna hold on to that a little while longer. I got two little palettes from Tarte. This one I actually got as a piece of gratis from Sephora. Really pretty palette. I've actually used it a little bit in my pro kit. Really smooth mattes, very reflective shimmers, a cute little palette, easy to travel with, and it smells like chocolate. So I'm keeping that around. That one's really nice still. This I recently got in a BoxyCharm. This is the Tarte Rainforest of the Sea Volume 3 palette. It's already on my Poshmark. It's untouched. It's brand new. I'm going to sell it to you with the packaging on it. I think right now it's going for $15. You can make an offer for me on Poshmark, and maybe I'll sell it to you. Who knows? Because I think a lot of people are selling this palette on Poshmark from BoxyCharm. Just because I've got so many like shimmery, beautiful colors. I've got like 100 palettes here, so that one's going in my Poshmark. Here I have my Too Faced palettes. I don't have too many. This one's my oldest one, I think. This is the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. You know, I bought this after the hype had kind of died down, but there were so many people that were just like, oh, it's still my favorite palette. So I bought it, and I haven't used it a ton. I can't smell it right now because my nose isn't working, but it does smell like chocolate, and it's really fun and awesome. I can kind of smell it. I can smell it a little bit. Still pretty. I'm still gonna hold on to it. This is something that I got in my Sephora gratis. I had to fight for it, actually. One of my coworkers called out Sephora of being like, hey, how come Kasha's the only person that hasn't gotten a peach palette? Because she yelled at the staff, I was able to get a peach palette. Thank you so much, Kat. Thanks for saving my life. I used to use it all the time in my kit when I first got it. But, you know, the colors that I used the most were the very few little peachy shades. Like these colors in here were the ones I was using the most. A little bit of this matte color. There's a lot of shadows in here that are pretty much untouched. I don't think I've ever used white peach. Barely used these two colors, these three colors, this purple. I really need to use this a little bit more. This is going in the Purgatory box because it's barely been touched. I do love the smell though. I do often open it up just to smell it. I got the I Want Candy palette. This is the Candy Johnson collab palette, and I did really love this when I first got it. This color right here is really unique and pretty. Really nice little shimmer. This color story is kind of smart. I love this like cool toned berry kind of color story over here. They're kind of like split up into fours. This peachy color story, this pinky color story. And these are supposed to be the Transformer shades. I haven't played around with those too much, but I need to use this a little bit more. These three would play nicely together. I think it's a nice formula, and the colors are really beautiful, and like I think they're smart colors. I think they would be colors that would be nice for bridal. The packaging's cute. It's like inspired by like a tin of candy, chocolates tin, but it's a little bit bulky. It's hard to travel with. I tend to not pack it into my kit, even though I think these are really nice bridal colors, but I don't pack it in my kit because it's too bulky, and it's already got a little bit of a dent in here too, so I need to use this a little bit more. This is kind of low-key in the Purgatory box just because I don't use it enough. Same with this guy. This is the Just Peachy Mattes palette. This is a beautiful mattes palette, but I don't use it enough because I have too many mattes palettes. I love the scent in here too. This also has a peach scent, not as strong and candy-like as this one, but still a beautiful peach scent, and the mattes are very blendable, really nice. And when I bought this, I'm just like, ooh, I'm going to use the peach palette way more because now I've got these beautiful peach matte colors to go with it. And that's not what happened, but I'd like that to be something that happened. That is the color called Just Peachy. Nice blendable matte formula. Okay, pushing through here. Now we got my Urban Decay palettes, plus one LA Girl palette, but you'll see why I'm including it into this category here. First up is my very first high-end palette I ever bought, Urban Decay Naked. When I open this up, I get so much nostalgia. I can't declutter it because it's like, I can't sell it, and I still kind of use it sometimes. And it just brings back so many memories. I don't know, like, I used to love the color Sidecar because Sidecar was my favorite cocktail. I bought this when I was like 21. Oh no, does that mean I've had this for like 7 years? Oh, that's disgusting. I use it just on myself. I used to use this color Naked to set my lid all the time. It was such a good setting shade. I had a friend that used to love using Sin and Dark Horse together. It was like her jam. You know, I think the reason they discontinued this palette is because, yes, it was such a cult palette in the beginning, and it's the palette that started it all. But there's so many like even blingier formulas out there, including ones from Urban Decay. Virgin is a beautiful inner corner highlight. Maybe I'll do a little throwback video with this guy soon. And then I eventually did pick up, the only other Naked palette I ever picked up is the Naked Smoky. I didn't use this guy nearly as much, but I do believe this gray is a beautiful color. This is going in the Purgatory box because it doesn't get picked up much and doesn't have the same sentimental value that the original Naked Smoky does, but this color High is really gorgeous. I did use it on a gig last year. You know, the look I did was very nice, it was very beautiful. It's very much like that Bad Habit palette. Similar color story going on. I definitely don't need to keep both. This is in the Purgatory box for sure. Everything's gonna have to go from the Purgatory box if it doesn't get sold. This is a palette that I got from my boyfriend for Christmas many years ago. I think 3 Christmases ago at this point. And it's like, it's supposed to be, it's an LA Girl palette that's like kind of a dupe of the Smoky, but it doesn't look anything like the Smoky. I've never really used it either. I've swatched it a number of times and I was just not like excited about using it. Oh, that's actually kind of an interesting color. That could be a fun color to use all over the lid, actually. This reminds me of that color High. It's actually nice and reflective. It's a weird formula though, and the plasticky weird Barbie packaging. I think my boyfriend got this at Hot Topic. I'm still very grateful. Thanks, Mike. This is definitely an interesting thing to have in my collection. Just an interesting piece. A little conversation piece, you know. This is a gift from my boyfriend during our first Christmas together. Did use this a lot when I first got it. This is the Naked Basics palette. And he just got it because he knew that the Naked palettes were like a hot, big deal kind of deal at the time. I was using Naked 2 as a setting shade a lot. I never used this palette enough though. I used it for just Naked 2. The shade right here, I never used it enough. Like, I think this Venus shade would have been really nice to use as like a little inner corner highlight. That is also going into the Purgatory box. Okay, now I've got 4 more exciting kind of Urban Decay palettes. This is one of my older ones too. This is the Urban Decay Electric. We've already briefly touched on this one, but this is like such an important, amazing Brights palette. Like, I don't think I'll ever declutter this because it is still, even after all these years, it still performs well. I never really used it that much on the eyes because you're not supposed to, especially for these like red tone colors. Occasionally for a pop of color. There's like not much that can beat it. You know, it's one of the best Brights palettes to ever be. Oh yeah, check that out. Until there was the Kristen Leanne palette. I just got this year. This is a newer addition to my collection. But I have been loving this palette. This is a really good formula, guys. Like, this is, if you slept on this palette, I don't know what to tell you, but it's really good. Like, you're gonna freak out when I show you these swatches. Like, I've been using the blues a lot in this palette. Like, it just kind of, the way it swatches is completely insane. I barely have to touch these shades. I've been absolutely loving this like blue transformer shade. Really kind of a unique color that is a staple. And look at my fingers. So shiny and beautiful. And I've been picking this palette up a lot throughout the year just because it's just, I don't know, it's a statement piece for sure. It's beautiful. A lot of people have complained that they don't like the Moondust palette, but I think that's simply because they don't know how to use it. This is just a glitter kind of topper palette, you guys. And I love it for that. I use it all the time to add a little bit of extra sparkle, a little bit of extra shimmer to any eyeshadow look. And depending on what kind of color scheme you've got going on, you can make these shadows work. I usually go in for Spectre. It doesn't really swatch well. Like I say, it's an eyeshadow topper. The greens are really beautiful, really sparkly. The blue is amazing. And this color Element is really amazing. Ooh, I wonder how it would look if I put Element on top of that Pat McGrath shadow. It's already so shimmery on its own, but it does give it a little extra pizzazz. That's pretty. I like it. And the last Urban Decay Naked palette I've got here is a piece of gratis I got. This is the Naked Ultimate Basics palette. I've only used this like twice, but I never got rid of it because I think this is a really beautiful, cool toned mattes palette. And the few times I did use this to make looks, I love the looks that I made. Like I made like really kind of beautiful, grungy, moody, kind of cool toned, but natural, neutral looks too. I gotta use this more, goddammit. I gotta shop my stash for this or something like that. I've got two Violet Voss palettes here. This one I just got in my Boxy Luxe box. This is the Holy Grail palette, and this is really a gorgeous palette. I'm so excited to get this in my Boxy Luxe box. It's still very new to me. Just got it back in December, like at the end of December. I've only used it a handful of times, but I've enjoyed it so far. Violet Voss is a very new formula to me, so I need to use it a ton more. That shade was really pretty, really reflective. The look that I did for that video, nice and red, the Wine and Dine color, was perfect in that situation. And another palette I also got in December, this was Weekly Wow at Sephora, and I kind of bought this as a whim, kind of like a panic buy, because I knew I was, at that point in December, I had decided I was going to do a no-buy year. Now, I still haven't really used this. This is the Like a Boss palette from Violet Voss. This color looks really interesting. Oh, really pretty. Like a little, slightly golden, like a yellow reflective kind of color. Really interesting. And the hollow packaging is pretty, but it's kind of freaky to try to show on camera. We're getting down to the V's. So next up I've got my Vizart palettes. Just got two of them. I've got the Neutral Mattes palette. I use this a ton in my Pro Kit. I don't know if you can tell, but there's quite a few divots in there. It's very pigmented. Running out of swatch space. I don't know, I guess I'll swatch this guy. That's probably my most used shade right there. I use it to just kind of cancel out dark circles and different things. But yeah, very pigmented, but can be sheared out really nicely too. Super pigmented. I've tried to use this palette a lot more this year, but this is another palette I haven't really used enough. This is the Dark Mattes palette. This is a palette that was recommended to me by Stephanie Nicole. I came really close this year to buying like all the Vizart palettes just because of Stephanie Nicole's recommendation, but I don't use them enough between these two palettes, so I'm glad I'm in a no-buy year. I'm not going to be buying any more palettes from them. I really want that editorial palette, but I'm not going to get it right now because I need to save money. But this is a nice palette. The colors are very true to color. It's a nice red, actually. Really nice. Love it. And I bought the Sonia Kashuk palette before I ever bought any of the Vizart palettes, just because I wanted to see if I wanted the, like, you know, this is a $20 palette, this is an $80 palette. I did buy these on sale at Izers and Amy's. I think this is one of the few palettes I actually bought full price. I got this at Target. But yeah, this is a very nice neutral mattes palette, but it's not as pigmented as this one. But sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you kind of, when I'm working, I like to have both of these on hand because you can see they're similar colors, but because this one's like softer in pigmentation, this is easier to use for blending out, and this one's easier to use for more kind of saturated, punchy kind of colors. So, love those. I've got two Wet n Wild palettes. This one's already actually on my Poshmark page. Barely been used. And I bought this palette because a lot of influencers are talking about how good it is for a drugstore palette. I don't know. I guess I'll go ahead and swatch this little green guy. It's nice. It's nice. I have so many green shadows. This little bronzy number here. I'm okay with putting this on my Poshmark because I have so many palettes that are kind of like it. Like if I have the Natasha Denona green palette, I don't need this palette. And this is another gift that I got from my boyfriend. This is the Wet n Wild Au Naturel palette. And I think this is another kind of dupe for either the Naked Smoky or the original Naked. Looks really pretty. Looks like it would be really reflective. And it's okay. It's about as reflective, if not even more reflective than... Okay, I thought I could get through this without opening another, but we're having technical difficulties, so here I am. The last thing I was talking about was this. Okay, so the palette I was talking about was this one, and I believe I talked about how shimmers are very nice. They might be even nicer than the Urban Decay palette, but still there's lots of palettes that are a little bit blingier than this one, so I don't mind adding it to the Purgatory box and or adding it to my Poshmark page. And the last two palettes I have to talk about here are just these two palettes that I got from Mikey. This one's still in the packaging, still haven't opened it. Just a little drugstore palette I think that he got from the dollar store. It's called it's from the brand Beautiful, I think. And this one's super ancient. This is Perfect 22 colors from A Absolute. And both of these will be available in my Poshmark as well. So that is my eyeshadow palette collection, guys. I am for sure gonna have to launder this blanket after this whole mess. Okay, that is it, guys. It is almost midnight, and I think I'm finally done shooting for you and sharing with you my entire eyeshadow palette collection. Over 100 eyeshadow palettes. Many of them will be put on my Poshmark page and given to my friends and what have you. But I hope you really enjoyed it. I really love watching large eyeshadow palette collection videos just because I don't know, they get me excited. I love eyeshadow palettes. I love looking at the colors, the swatches, the different textures and stuff. So if you have a eyeshadow palette collection video on your channel, and I haven't seen it yet, let me know down in the comments. I'll come check it out because I love watching these videos, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video because it's been a bit of a struggle making this video. I'm not gonna lie. I ran out of beer. I'm sick. My voice is nasally. I kept accidentally deleting footage and having to reshoot it. So midnight, I have to go to bed. I'm tired. If I don't get rest, I'm never gonna get better. But I've been meaning to make this video for a long time. There's a lot of things I said in the video that I'm gonna be keeping. Now that I'm looking at it over again, I think that I'm gonna be getting rid of a lot more than I said that I would be. Check out my Poshmark page. I'm probably gonna be adding a lot more things. And yeah, I hope you really liked watching it. And quick little message. The giveaways from my last Ipsy and BoxyCharms are now closed. Congratulations to Tina Ransom, who is the winner. I just sent out her package today. But don't worry, guys, there will be more giveaways I think next week. I'm going to be putting out my Ipsy bag and BoxyCharm unboxings. Hopefully, that is if they come next week. Yeah, they should come by next week. So keep an eye out for that for my next giveaway, and I thank you very much for watching. Is it obvious that I'm like sick and tired? Like literally really tired, need to go to bed, and also my nose is raw from blowing it all day. But I hope you guys really enjoyed watching this, and I hope to hang out with you again real soon. Cheers. I did save a little sip of the molasses disaster, so cheers to that. And bye.